BBC Coventry and Warwickshire. But at 8 minutes to 5, let's go to the movies. Voice of sanity in these mad times. James Luxford, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I've never been called that before.
Well, that shows you everything, doesn't it? But, anyway, about the times we live in. James is the movie reviewer of the Radio Times and the Metro newspaper. He's here every Thursday to preview movies opening in Coventry and Warwickshire. Before we get to this week's batch, actually, a tweet of yours I noticed from this week, which I had to just sort of mention. This idea, and we see it all the time now in movies, don't we? And we've seen it in the Star Wars stuff with the Carrie Fisher stuff sort of brought back again. Bringing back James Dean from the dead.
Yeah, this is a lot more than, traditionally that's done with sort of Peter Cushing in Rogue One and things like that. This is bringing back James Dean to quote-unquote star in a new film. It's a Vietnam War drama. I think it's called Finding Jack or something like that. And
it's not just a little cameo in a movie. This is the whole movie.
This is a digital James Dean created from pictures and old footage and sort of mapped over another actor, and it's bringing him back from the dead, if you like, onto screen for a performance that he couldn't possibly have known about. Obviously, other actors are incensed about it. Somewhere Chris Evans, who plays Captain America, saying, do we do this with John Lennon's voice to create a new song, or Picasso to create a new kind of painting? And also a little more, I suppose, a bit more serious, the daughter of Robin Williams, the late actor, saying, this is puppeteering the dead. It's not something that I'd ever want to happen to my father. And it's a strange thing. I do think it's a little bit inevitable in terms of we saw Gemini Man, old Will Smith versus young Will Smith.
With the technology that's available now, they will use it. Okay, good to get your thoughts on that. But really keen to hear your thoughts on this, the new Martin Scorsese movie.
Yes, The Irishman, Martin Scorsese's new film about the life of Frank Sheeran, a mob enforcer who begins to work for union boss Jimmy Hoffa.
Management can only fire a driver on very specific charges. So, you ever show up late?
No.
Do you have any moving violations?
No.
Do you drink on the job?
No.
You ever hit anybody?
On a job?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
All right, then. We don't have nothing to worry about.
It's so Scorsese, isn't it, really?
Absolutely.
Robert De Niro. I mean, you mentioned Chris Evans a minute ago. He's in this as well, isn't he?
No. It's Robert De Niro, it's Al Pacino, it's Joe Pesci. And goodness, I love this film.
Really?
Goodness, I love this. I'm a big Martin Scorsese fan. I'm a big fan of Goodfellas and things like that. This feels like a spiritual successor to that. It's Martin Scorsese being a bit older. It's not celebrating the life of a gangster anymore. It's about...
Which he did in Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Really?
It's Frank Sinatra playing and glitzy lights and things like that. This is quiet conversations in the back of restaurants. This is men getting older and living with the life they've lived, a life of violence, a life of crime, a life, you might say, of evil. And it's just superbly acted.
Expressing regret,
losing his relationships with people like his daughters. And it's it's very much in that mold. The narration, the violence. It's also about 3.5 hours long, but it's impeccably acted. There was a lot of headlines over the de-aging. He plays himself at 40, and they gradually age him up to where he is now. I don't think it didn't really notice. So I read another review that said it's no worse than, say, if they wore prosthetics.
Right,
so you can notice a little bit, but you get used to it very quickly. And it's just wonderfully written, wonderfully acted. Just not the sort of movie that's about anymore. It's on Netflix at the end of November. It's at select cinemas from Friday. I really strongly recommend you go and see it on the biggest screen possible.
And it's not often you say that.
No.
Really strongly recommend you go and see that. So moving from that to Luce. I don't know anything about this. Tell me a bit about it.
Yeah, it's a drama set in modern day about Naomi Watts plays a mother who doesn't know who to believe when her son's teacher accuses him of something disturbing.
Last week, he wrote a paper in which he argued that violence was a necessary cleansing force.
You teach this?
I don't.
So what?
Just something's going on, and I want to be in front of it.
She thinks I'm a poster boy, black kid who overcame his tragic past.
You really don't like her, do you?
Any good?
I liked it. Very well acted. A very interesting story about the way, the son is this star pupil, and he finds that label quite a bit of a wrench, and he becomes very resentful. It's a really interesting look into racial politics, into father-son, parent-son relationships, and just Naomi Watts, Octavia Spencer, just two incredible actors going head to head.
Good stuff. All right. So if you remember the Back to the Future movies, you remember the car in the movies. It was a DeLorean. The man behind it was, very charismatic American who set up a plant in Northern Ireland and was championed by the then Prime Minister at the time, Margaret Thatcher. Now there's a movie all about him.
Yes, Driven. It's a comedy about an FBI informant's friendship with the car designer, John DeLorean.
Ladies and gentlemen, the most successful auto executive in living memory, Mr. John DeLorean.
It is my great pleasure to present to you the DeLorean motor car.
It's like science fiction or something.
It's the future.
That's what we thought anyway, at the time, didn't we? And look how that panned out.
Unfortunately, I thought this was an okay film. Jason Sudeikis plays the FBI informant who becomes linked to John DeLorean and then gets more in trouble and kind of drags him down with him. Well acted, quite funny, completely fictional. And so we have a real problem with those based on real events movies that aren't actually real. I just wonder why I'm watching it.
Okay. Driven is out this weekend. Next weekend, if you're into your cars, Le Mans opens. So expect we'll be talking about that next Thursday. Good man.
And Christian Bale's Birmingham accent.
Okay, that's got to be mentioned. James, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Metro newspaper and Radio Times reviewer James Luxford with us on the programme again.
BBC Coventry and Warwickshire travel.